Welcome to another discussion of the Iliad by Homer. I apologize for the lacuna yesterday. I was just flat out exhausted. Something, probably a bug, or maybe, I don't know, getting up too early in the morning. I don't know what it was. But I missed the date for the live. So if you're tuning in now, thank you. But otherwise, I'll just edit this later, and put it up as a truncated form. But I do want to talk about the Iliad. I don't want to miss out on this chapter that we're doing. This is chapter 9, or book 9 of the Iliad. We're using the Fagles translation of the Iliad. And this is the embassy to Achilles. It's a very good chapter, a very good book. I'm using today my beat up old copy of the Iliad. This goes way back. This one has seen lots of use and abuse, and tabs and everything, markings on the interior. So this is a working copy I've had for years. I think I got this way back in high school. I think so. So quite some time, and I just picked it up the other day, was thumbing through it, and saw some of the notes and some of the neat stuff to share with you today. So, if you recall, we were talking last time about various themes in the text, and one of the themes that we have is metamorphosis, and that's the change or alteration, especially the change and alteration from youth to adulthood. And Achilles is our prime example of this. He's our protagonist, our first to suffer, protagonista. And in this chapter, in this book, I'll say chapter frequently, but it's not a chapter; it's a book. In this chapter, he has an embassy that sent him to try to convince him about coming back to the war and joining the Achaeans again, but he refuses, and the reasons why he does so are important to look at. He's changed even in the time that he's been sitting there in his own ships, getting more dark, more brooding, more introspective, I suppose you could say. And this introspection on the part of Achilles, I think, reflects a great deal what young people go through, especially. I've mentioned before that this work goes over very well with juniors and seniors in high school, as well as young adults, because I think it's something that happens during that era where you change from being a child and everything's fine, peachy. Mom and dad are doing everything for you, and everybody loves you because you're cute, and Santa Claus comes all the time. And it's like you change. You begin to question. Mom and dad maybe not as perfect as you thought they were. People stop liking you because you stop being cute, and you actually have to do something or merit something. Santa Claus not only stops coming, but you end up having deep questions about the nature of Santa Claus. And I think that era of questioning that occurs is there's a tendency to want to close up and become more insular. You go into your cocoon. You like to wrap yourself in a blanket and just like fetal position, cradling, watching, romance movies or Hallmark movies, as one of my students said. Or if you're a guy, you like get all brooding and goth and go around mumbling to yourself. That whole era is sort of like a cocoon. It's like you're inside of a cocoon at that time. And during that time, like the process that's normally used to explain this is the metamorphosis of the butterfly. Let's see if I can find that for you. It's a good visual. And it's normally a process that occurs over some time where the butterfly changes from being this caterpillar, this grub, to becoming a cocoon, going into its cocoon, and then eventually coming out. That's a nice one. Eventually coming out of its cocoon to the rest of the world. So I'm going to open this, and I'm going to open this so we can take a look at it. There's a really neat visual here that shows this very process. I like that visual. And during the time that the butterfly is in the cocoon, it gets all there's nothing left of it. It becomes just goo, and the goo that it becomes then eventually comes out as see here. During that time period, when it's in the chrysalis, as it's called, it becomes a goo, and nothing is left of it afterwards until it emerges as the butterfly. That's a great visual there of the butterfly coming forth and emerging as a full fledged butterfly. Here's another good one. So in the ancient world, they used to talk about this as the example. This is what humans go through too, because we follow a pattern of nature. And every creature seems to follow a similar type of pattern, the ancient world would say. And at least for us as humans, we could take a message from this. Like, like the young person is in the cocoon stage, is in the chrysalis stage, but they will emerge eventually, come back into the world as an adult. What would it take for that to happen? That's kind of what this book is about. So seeing this, we begin to think, well, okay, what happens during that period that you're in that chrysalis? Because you're no longer the little child, and you're no longer that trusting, believing type of person who the world seems to be your oyster. One of the things I think that happens is that you begin to question the very nature of reality and the relationship to the divine and the relationship to action in the world. Like, what's the point of anything? And there's a great crisis at this moment because you could fall into total cynicism. You could fall into depression. You could fall into not believing in anything and going a route where belief itself is just completely thrown out the window because obviously Santa Claus doesn't exist, and so therefore God can't exist, right? I think that that is a very dangerous place to be in. And I think what the Iliad is suggesting is it's almost like a warlike situation. It's like a war raging around you, and you want to just insulate yourself from that war, take yourself away from it. And it doesn't always end up that easy, shall we say. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, remember that we're in here, book 9. So if we look at the text, we are developing the idea of chiasmus here in the text. We're going to take a look at the text here. Chiasmus, remember, is the balance between one section and another. If, for instance, book 9 is to be balanced, and remember, it's like the facade of a building, like a classical building has that area. I think it's called the frieze, and the area has a depiction of some sort. You know, the struggle with the centaurs, or the battle of the Peloponnese, and something on this side will be balanced with something on this side, and so on and so forth, up into the main two figures that will balance against each other in the center. Music did this, and architecture did this, and poetry did this, and on a large scale, you'd see this same type of chiasmatic structure in literature. So here we are in book 9. That means if we scroll down and go back from book 24, counting back 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, book 16 balances book 9. That's where Patroclus fights and dies. So if you've read the whole work, I don't want to give too much away, but Patroclus fights and dies. If you have read the whole work, you know that this section is where the best friend of Achilles gets smitten. He gets struck down, and it's a terribly tragic section, and that balances to a certain degree back up here in book 9, where Achilles is still sulking in his tents and refusing to join the action and allowing comrades that he's known for at least 7 years, maybe 8 years, allowing comrades that he's known for quite some time to die, to suffer, to get wounded, because he refuses to help. He refuses to join the battle. I think that's a very powerful statement that's being made here, but in the balance of the book 9 and the Patroclus fights and dies book. That if we look at the balance between the two, we're supposed to look forward to the consequences of what Achilles decides to do. And then later on, when we get to that book, we look back to see, well, how did we get here? What caused this? It wasn't just an accident that Patroclus goes out and dies. It's decisions that Achilles made that at the time he thought he was very righteous to make, but they end up going very badly. So there's that. Let's also think for a minute about some of the other themes that are being developed here, because we've got the themes, for instance, of iconoclasm, where the gods are being undermined. And remember, I said that the gods are undermined by Homer, primarily because he wants us to focus not so much on these godlike powers or properties, what the Egyptians called the neteru. He wants us to not focus on them. He wants us to focus instead on the nobility and the virtue and the power and the glory of human beings, Hector, Diomedes, and the other characters that fight and die on the field of Ilium, on the plains of Ilium. So his iconoclasm is not just to thumb his nose at religion. It's in order to, I don't know, portray or encourage or spark a shift in religious thought that seems to have been occurring right around the 800s there and early 700s. Humanity was beginning to look at their gods slightly differently. And I think Homer is very pivotal in that, in what he creates here in the Iliad and then in his next text, the Odyssey, if we're to claim that both are written by the same singer. Okay, so that being said, we also have other themes, the theme of Kleos, which is glory, and that shows up mostly in these great passages of warlike behavior where a character shines, right? An Aristeia, it's called, and there they show their own glory through battle and heroism and courage and gaining fame for themselves. Another theme that we've been working through has been the theme of hubris, which is pride, and we see it primarily in Achilles and his decision. And what is his decision? Well, at the very beginning, we're told it's a mania, the menin, the rage. The rage prompts him to withdraw himself from battle because he's been insulted by Agamemnon. He goes to his mom and he blubbers, and she goes up to her dad, her big father in the sky, Zeus, and she says, help me out, and put the thumb onto the Achaeans so the Trojans can triumph, and then my boy can swoop in and show how great he is. And Zeus agrees. And then we have, the breakout of hostilities and great carnage scenes. And we have a marvelous scene of Hector returning to Troy. And Hector proves himself to be the hero of the story. He's the protector. He's the one that we should look at and say, oh, that's the type of person I want to be. Not Achilles. Achilles is not the hero. He's the protagonist, but not the hero. Remember that the protagonist is the first sufferer, protoagonistus. He suffers the most, he changes the most, he endures the most. The hero is somebody who's a protector, the one who wants to emulate. And in this case, you'd be advised not Achilles. So those are the major themes that we're looking at. If I left any out, feel free to put it in the notes. I'm sure you all remember much more than I do on this. But one thing we would want to look at too is the structural pattern of the work. And I found some interesting little visuals they're good to pass along anyway. And I'll put a link if I can for you to see these. So for instance, this one, which I found at a very good website, I'll put the website up, actually is, let's see here, here it is, actually is a map of the full work. Kind of amazing to see it. There it is. That's the full work. That's all 24 books mapped out together. Kind of daunting, may not be able to see much. Fortunately, on my document, you can zoom in and you see all the different sections of the work. And if we go back up to the top of the work, the website where I found this breaks this down so that you see the number of days that this occurs in. You see the books where it occurs here, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. You see the major movements in the narrative. And then you begin to see other things like the references, the reference points, and the compositional layers over here on the left. So it's a really pretty thorough analysis of the text. Very handy if you wanted to go into a deep dive of how this whole text pans out. One thing to keep in mind is that in our Fegel's translation here, Fegel's has the titles like the Embassy to Achilles. Those don't exist in the originals. Fegel's invents that, so he gives a sort of summary for the text. He's pretty accurate, so we can go with his accuracy and say, oh, that's helpful. But it's not in the original, just to make sure we know that. Also realize that the original, well, the first transcribed form we have is done in books, in scroll form. That was, you'd have a big scroll with all the writing, and then you'd run out of papyrus, you'd run out of paper, you'd run out of scroll, and so you'd get a new scroll, and then you'd write it onto there. And so when they go to write down this great poem, they are organizing it according to the types of scrolls that you have. This scroll contains this matter, and this scroll contains this matter, and then we put them all, line them all up in order, and they form a complete work. Their scrolls were numbered, if you will, using the alphabet, because in Greek, numbers and letters corresponded to one another. There was a correspondence in all of the alphabetic gamma to one, two, three, four. So when we see here in this chart, you see alpha here, beta, gamma, delta, so on and so forth, epsilon, zeta. These are numbers, right? They're not Phoenician numbers like we use, because we use a different number system, a different number language. But they're numbers because they represent numerical one, two, three, four. The ancients saw this as a mystical correspondence, letters and numbers being connected to each other, and they frequently would write a text or a word or a phrase that had a numerical value, and both numerical value and letter value corresponded to an idea. So that you could put into a text hidden messages. You could spell out a word or give a character a name, or write a phrase, and that phrase or name or word could be converted into numbers, and the numbers represented an idea. You follow? So if I wanted to convey an idea, I don't know, I might convey that idea through the name of a character. This character is named, for the sake of argument, this character is named Seven. You know, his name adds up to seven, and seven represents a certain concept in the philosophical schools. Or I might have a phrase, and the phrase itself might add up to a certain number, and that number represents this idea. I might just put in a certain number, that the number itself represents an idea, and so we have 15,000 of this thing, and that actually represents a certain number. So they were very tricky in the ancient world texts. You find this over and over again in everything from Greek and Roman writings to the writings of the gospel makers, and even the writings of the Old Testament. They would do this. It was called gematria in Jewish culture. Gematria was the correspondence of numbers to letters, and in Greek it was isopsaphia, which is the correspondence of numbers to letters. Isopsaphia literally means, I think, lining up pearls or something like that. Pearls of wisdom before swine. So when we have our books here, they are numbers one, two, three, four, even though in the original listing they would have been scroll alpha, beta, gamma, delta. And I don't know for sure whether Homer had access to this or whether he dwelt on this. I know that he had names that meant things, but I don't know whether he had numbers that meant things. So we might find, a number here or a name here and find, oh, that means something. That has a numerical correspondence. I just don't know if that's correct, because I don't know if Homer was doing that. I know other later authors are, for sure, because they capitalized on this correspondence between letter and number. So that's gematria or isopsaphia. And this structure of the work, I think, is very helpful. I'll put the website where I found it up so you can take a look at it. Um, and I took it and I put it to correspond to something as well, which I also want to share, because there's correspondences in the ancient world all the time. They're always doing correspondences. This looks like that, this seems to be like that. And so they put these things together. So, like, for instance, the life cycle of the butterfly is correspondent to the life cycle of human beings. And so we can use the butterfly as a representation of what humans go through. We call this analog. The connection between things is analog. And The ancients, at least, would claim that all human thought is essentially analog. It's analogous. That we don't put a chair into our head or a tree or a dog. We put something that's an analogy to tree, chair, dog into our head, namely a concept which is connected to a sound, dog, which is connected to letters, DOG. And we put into our heads that analogy that allows us to deal with the world around us. And the ancients would say that that analogy is can be so closely tied to the real thing that when you're finding the name of the thing, you're actually finding its essence, what the Latins called its quiddity. You're finding out that dog is that dog, hund, dog, chien. By naming it, you're you're able to understand what its essential quality is. And so words had great power in the ancient world. So much so that some cultures, the Jewish culture, for instance, would not allow people to say certain words, or you couldn't touch a text with your hands because your hands would be dirty. You touch it with, like, the Torah. You didn't touch the Torah with your hands. The high priest could only after certain extensive rituals of cleansing, and even there, he was very careful not to touch it for too long. Normally when you read, you would read using a golden pointer. It'd be like a gold. It was a gold finger on the end of a stick. So you'd have a stick and you have a gold finger on the end of it, and you would point to things using that gold pointer. Mainly because they saw the words as being so powerful that you didn't want to mess with them. You didn't want to sully them. And most ancient world peoples saw the same thing, that they saw the written word as being extremely powerful, and they saw the spoken word as being so powerful that some people who commanded it could change the nature of reality. We now call them public speakers or rhetoricians or politicians, or entertainers. Um, I think that there is actually some validity to this, because we all know what it's like when we see somebody that we respect, or somebody that we admire on the silver screen, or somebody that we say is a public figure or an influencer, by the way, like influenza, that that person can then say something, and we actually will follow their suggestion almost without questioning. They could say, try new Coke, and we're like, yay, new Coke, glug glug. So even now we have this power of words that stem from people who understand how to use words, and that power has influence over us. We get influenced, that is, we are in the fluidity, in the wash of it. And yeah, so one has to be very careful with words. And Plato, for instance, later will show this is very important in his work, all through his work, because he's very careful in his choice of words. Homer was very careful in his choice of words. He was trying to embody a culture, but also to persuade a culture. And when he goes to talk about the gods, for instance, he has a great responsibility to talk about them in a certain way. He's not dissing the gods; he is changing the nature of the way people think about the gods. It's like a sort of spell that he creates, and the original word spell is basically, it's a story. It's something that we weave or craft and put forth, and that's why when we have a good spell or a God spell, we can positively influence people, because that gospel is something that has changed people for 2,000 years. That God spell. So when we're dealing with a spell, we're dealing with words or a narrative or a crafted piece of work out of words, and we can influence the way people think, and the way that they operate. Now, all of that is a big way of saying, in this book, book 9, we get a great vision of what Homer at least saw as a God spell. What do I mean by that? Well, God spell always had to do with saying words that would influence a person to do something good, positive, come out of themselves, emerge from their cocoon. The God spell was initially done in order to counteract the dark spells or the demonic spells or the spells of depression and inaction and what was the word that they used? Um, oh, I forget the name of the word. The midday demon it was called. Um, and the word will come to me in a minute. See, words, right? The word will come to me in a minute. But the thought was that people can be influenced by a certain, call it demonic activity, which is words that are said that tell you you're nothing, you're worthless, you're hopeless, it's pointless, there's no reason to do this. And yeah, there's a song by the Who actually about this. Um, and the minute I remember it, it'll be grand. I've got a block right now. In order to counteract that whole experience of depression, demoralization, you would have to weave a counter spell. You'd have to tell a story or tell a narrative that would persuade somebody. It would take them away, it would turn them around, persuade, so that they would be able to see a way out from the darkness that they were in, the mind being clouded by things, so that you were depressed. Ah, I got it. Melancholia. That's what it was. Melancholia, and the Who song that goes with it is quite fantastic. But Melancholia was the noonday demon, the demon of ennui, as the French later call it. And there's a great actually painting here. Let's see if we can find the painting here. There's a great painting by Albrecht Dürer, who was the German of painter and block printer of the 1500s, I think it was. Um, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. That's good. Lots of different examples of that. I'll call this up here and we can take a look at it. Um, Melancholia was a considered to be a specific demon that infected the mind, the noonday mind, and why noon? I'm not entirely sure. But this is this 1514 engraving by Albrecht Dürer, which I'll pull up here for us. Melancholia. Okay, here's Melancholia, and you see here in this painting this angel over here on the lower right, and this big old painting. It's an engraving actually by Dürer. This angel over on the right, and he's got the laurels. That is, he's got all the awards. Good looking angel, got his tools ready to go, his calipers to be able to create things. He's got the keys ready to unlock anything he needs to unlock. He's got the purse there that he can pay for anything he needs to pay for. All of his tools there for building and for carpentry, already set to go, right? Everything lying around, just waiting for him to start working on this sphere and to create something out of this sphere. But he can't. He won't. His dog is sleeping, noonday, sleeping, and he's got this gigantic, like, platonic solid there sitting in front of him. But there's a demon, see? Melancholia, this demon, that is coming out of the noonday sun here. And it is causing even an angel to sit brooding while time waits for him. And even his little putti, his little uh, accompanying angel, is brooding. He's not doing anything, just kind of waiting for this angel to set to. But the angel can't set to because he's infected with melancholia, which is that inability to move, brooding, dark. Look how the shadows are in this great etching by Albert Dürer. All the light is coming in from the side, but he's all in darkness. He's all overshadowed. That's a really cool painting. And the noonday demon was combated primarily by by words. Words were where normally you would combat this demon. Though you could combat it, I suppose, if you take the example of Jonah and the whale. Jonah brooding, and God offers him a sandwich or something, and say, "Here, eat this." So he does, and he gets better, and he's able to actually operate. So I suppose getting somebody a good beef sandwich might help too. But the way that the artist always said you could break this is by a counter spell, and that counter spell rested primarily on rhetorical devices. Rhetorical devices. So here's the song by the Who, which I'll play for you later. It's off of their album Sellout, but you can check that out on your own. Um, I'll put it in the notes, and you can look at it then. Um, Rhetoric then was the method that the ancients said was the art of speaking, and the art of speaking was in order to persuade people, in order to bring them around. And you normally had, let's see here, see if I can find a good. Yeah, there's a great website here called the Woods of Rhetoric, the Silva Rhetorica, and it has all these different methods that are really good to employ when you are doing rhetoric, when you're trying to persuade somebody. Here it is, the Silva Rhetorica, and this Silva Rhetorica, this ability to persuade others, was a skill that you could actually learn. Um, and this is the look at the Caroline. This is one that particularly was employed by Roman orators on a regular basis. So, and the Greeks also saw this as important to develop this skill, this ability with oratory and the ability to speak. Oh, that's a very good one. Yeah, this is Cicero denouncing Catiline. Great painting here. Um, if I can open it. Sure, I can. Here it is. Yeah, there he is. This is Cicero, and he's denouncing Catiline over here in the lower right hand corner, telling the senators that this guy was going to kill everybody, and thus breaking a spell that Catiline had put on them. That is, the spell that they all thought he was good and noble and true and honest and was going to deal with them well, and he was actually plotting to murder half of them and take over control of the Senate. And Cicero stood out and he said, "This guy is up to no good." And his words were strong enough that he was able to counteract the influence that Catiline had over the Senate, convince the Senate that Catiline was actually plotting to take over the Republic. But that's my point here, is that rhetoric was what was used in order to persuade other people. So what we see in this chapter here, the embassy to Achilles, is we see the rhetoric that is used to try to bring Achilles out of himself, back into the world of humanity and the world of warfare and the world of adults, of adult men. And Agamemnon chooses three of his best speakers to try to go to influence Achilles, who's still sitting in his tent. So he chooses Odysseus, because Odysseus is always one of the best speakers. He chooses Diomedes, and then he chooses Phoenix. Now, Phoenix is an odd one. We'll get to him in a minute, but we don't see Phoenix before this. We see Diomedes and Odysseus. We know a little bit about him, but we don't know much about Phoenix at all. And Agamemnon says, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what else to do. We'll never take the broad streets of Troy. This is a failure. We're going to go home. So you can see that Agamemnon's kind of crushed himself. And Diomedes steps up first and he says, shut up. We're here to do a job. We're going to get it done. So spare me your anger. So my courage, mine was the first you mocked among the Argives, branding me a coward and a poor soldier. Yes, well, they know all about that, the Argives, young and old. But you, right? You with that royal scepter, the Father gave you honor beyond all other men alive. He never gave you courage, the greatest power of all, desperate man. So Diomedes is encouraging Agamemnon, his king, to step up, if you want to use that term. He's appealing to a certain aspect of his character and trying to get what's called a thumotic response. Thumos is that thing in the heart that prompts you to want to defend things, to take action, to do the deed. Thumos is like courage. What the cowardly lion needs, courage. Thumos is really, it's a manly response to things that are threatened. So if your pride or your image is threatened, you want to step up and say, "Hey, I'm not a coward. Knock it off." Well, that's kind of what Diomedes is doing here. And then all the Achaeans shout assent. Nestor says, "Right, good idea. Let's dive into this and do something about our situation." And he then Agamemnon says, "Okay, fine. I'll step up. You go to Achilles and you talk to Achilles, and I'll give him all these gifts. I'll give him lots of different things." So Agamemnon says, um, "Since I was blind and lost in my own inhuman rage, now at last I'm bent on setting things to rights. I was wrong when I took the girl. I want to set it right. I want to fix it. I want to win this war. I want to get Achilles back in. So I'll give a priceless ransom to Achilles, paid for friendship. I'll pay for his friendship." And here's what he offers: "I'll name in full the splendid gifts I offer. 7 tripods, never touched by fire." Tripods are normally bronze, and so it was you'd put coal or charcoals in there, and you braise, you burn the charcoals. It would provide light and heat, basically. It's like I'll give him, 7 Foreman grills. Okay, 7 tripods, never touched by fire. 10 bars of gold. That's a lot. 20 burnished cauldrons, again, bronze cauldrons you cook things in. A dozen massive stallions, so big old horses, racers who earn me trophies with their speed. 7 women I'll give him, flawless, skilled in crafts, women of Lesbos, the ones I chose, my privilege that day he captured the Lesbos citadel himself. So I give him 7 really beautiful women, not just older women or women that are depressed, demoralized. I'll give him beautiful supermodels, 7. So he says, "I'll give him even more than that. I'll give the Briseis's daughter that I took, the one that I took away in the beginning. I'll give him back. I'll give her back. I'll swear a binding oath in the bargain. Not only will I give, 7 women and then Briseis, I'll swear an oath that I was never with Briseis. I never touched her. Nothing. She's fresh and pure like the day that I took her." Okay, all these gifts, and then, if he comes back and joins us, and we plunder the city of Priam, I'll let Achilles enter when we share the spoils. Load the holds of the ships with gold and bronze. Right, he can take his choice of the women. Only Argive Helen, but any other woman from Troy he can choose. If we get back to Argos, right, I'll even pile it on more, and I will marry him to my daughter, my other daughter. He'll be my son by marriage, right? I will honor him on a par with Orestes. 3 daughters are mine in my well-built halls: Chrysothemis, Laodice, Iphianassa. We won't talk about Iphigenia right now because Iphigenia was, I had to sacrifice her to get over here. But I have 3 more, and one of them he can choose, and he can marry her, and he become my son-in-law. Right? No bride price home to Peleus' house. I will add a dowry. I'll even pay for the wedding, and give him a living wage after that. So, this is a big list, folks. Agamemnon is really going out of his way to try and get Achilles back into the fold, heaping things on him. Now, we got to take into account maybe he's like a gangster and he knows that Achilles isn't going to live long, and so he can promise all this stuff and never have to deliver, maybe. But I think that it's better to say Agamemnon is he's really desperate. He really wants Achilles to come back because he wants this war to end. So he's going to send these guys to him with all these great offers. The dowry, the 7 women, the women from Troy, his own daughter, Briseis, the gold, the bronze, the weapons, the jewels, all this stuff, right? He'll send all this. I would extend it all to him if he will end his anger. Let him submit to me. In other words, let him come back and be subordinate to me as part of the army, as part of the military. Take up his rank again. And this is it's reasonable, right? If you were a reasonable person, because this is a big list of stuff, and the war has to be concluded. And Agamemnon is not so terrible a ruler that you can't just say, okay, I'm doing my own thing, but it's all under the umbrella of Agamemnon. All this is reasonable. So Agamemnon himself says, only the god of death is so relentless. So if Achilles rejects all this, he's like the god of death. That's kind of an interesting little point. Achilles, if he is stubborn and obstinate and refuses to relent, has put himself in a position where he is essentially the enemy, the god of the underworld, the biggest, baddest, worst god that there is. Zeus was pretty powerful, it's true, but the wealthy one was Plutus, that is Hades. Hades is his realm, Plutus is his title. Nobody really knows what his real name is. He has lots of different names people call him by. But that god, death, Achilles will become like him if he doesn't submit, if he doesn't relent. That doesn't bode well for Achilles. But Agamemnon does say, let him bow to me. I'll send all these people his way. And of course, he's praised for this. Everybody says, yeah, this is great, awesome. And he essentially sends these three characters, Odysseus and Phoenix and Diomedes, to go to Achilles. And they each represent, these fellows, each represent an aspect of rhetoric. So if we go back to the forest of rhetoric, the Silva Rhetoricae, in rhetoric, there are three persuasive appeals. There's logos, there's pathos, and there's ethos. Logos, pathos, ethos. These three persuasive appeals are like the roots of all rhetoric. Everything in rhetoric goes back to one of these three things: logos, pathos, ethos. Not always clear, right? Because sometimes you get a little pathos with a little ethos with a little logos. But they all three go back to those roots. There are three roots at the base of the tree of rhetoric. And what do they mean? Well, logos is an appeal to reason. Humans are reasonable animals, more or less. And so if you appeal to reason, a person will be like, that makes sense. Very well, I'll do that. That's logos. If you appeal to pathos is passion or emotion. So you say, this terrible thing will happen unless we do this. And people are like, well, I don't want the terrible thing to happen. You're right. I must do something, right? Oh, I'm swept up in the moment. I must do that. Or I don't want ring around the collar. I want to have somebody lovely to hang around my neck. I'll buy that product. And so pathos is appeal to emotion. Right? Do you want this lovely car? It comes with a beautiful woman, so buy the car. That's pathos, essentially. Then the third is ethos. And ethos is an appeal to the character of the person speaking. Right? You all know me, I'm a noble man. You all know me, I am a virtuous character. You all know me, I'm the Archbishop of York. You all know me, I am the president of Cambridge University. And so that appeal then is based on the reputation of the person or the connection of the person speaking to the person being spoken to, right? You all have followed me into combat over and over again. I've never let you down. You know that how good a commander I am. We've developed a bond under the same kind of struggle. Listen to what I have to say. So logos, pathos, ethos, the three persuasive appeals. And what Homer does here is he sets us up to have a speaker who specializes in logos, a speaker who specializes in ethos, and a speaker who specializes in pathos. The logos one, and again, they're not entirely distinct, so we have to keep that in mind because sometimes they're interwoven, just like the roots of a tree are sometimes interwoven. The logos, that is Odysseus. The pathos is essentially Diomedes, and the ethos is Phoenix. Odysseus comes to the tent of Achilles, and he says, "Look, Achilles, we know that that Agamemnon did you wrong. We know that it's a bad situation, but he's willing to change, and he offers you these things, all these different goods, and he goes through the whole list, almost verbatim. Which remember when you're a herald, and you're delivering a message, you are delivering it verbatim so that you don't get messed up and so that the original message can get sent to the person receiving. So Odysseus tells the message almost verbatim. And he ends his speech. Let me see if I can call this up for you all. He ends his speech here at 370, line 370. I need to share this too with you. He ends his speech at line 370, basically saying all this stuff we're going to give you if you come back. You know, we want you back in the fold. It's reasonable for you to come back. There's no reason for you to stay out of this, he says. All this Agamemnon would extend to you if you end your anger. But if you hate the son of Atreus all the more, him and his troves of gifts, at least take pity on all our united forces mauled in battle here. They will honor you like a god. Think of the glory you will gather in their eyes. Now you can kill Hector, seized with murderous frenzy, certain there's not a single fighter his equal, no Achaean brought to Troy in the ships. Now for once you can meet the man head on. Notice the ending, and Homer's very crafty in this. He has Odysseus giving the list of goodies verbatim, almost word for word from what came before. But then at the end, he leaves out something Agamemnon says. Remember that Agamemnon, in his big old speech, had said that if he doesn't come back, then he's like the god of death. He's implacable like the god of death. So at the end of all this, Agamemnon says, I'll give him all this stuff. All this I would extend to him if he will end his anger. Let him submit to me. Only the god of death is so relentless. Death submits to no one. So Agamemnon's ending speech says, let him bow to me. I'm the greater king. I'm the elder born. I claim the greater man. Tell him that I'm better than he is. Tell him I'm the greater man. Well, that wouldn't sit well with Achilles. So what does our man Odysseus do? He changes the ending. All of this stuff he'll give to you, you know, that you'll have all these things and you'll live out your laws, as he says here, in sleek and shining peace. So you'll have all these different things. Wonderful, wonderful gifts that will come your way. And Odysseus then says, and if this doesn't appeal to you, think of all of us, myself included, that we're going to get destroyed by Hector unless you come back. And if you don't like Agamemnon, that's fine by me. But come back and help us too. Help us to survive against the onslaught of the Trojans. And then we will honor you. We will give you gifts as well. Reasonably thinking, oh, you know, that makes sense. I'll come back and do that. But also appealing a bit to the pathos, the connection, the have mercy on other people, and appealing to, as a matter of fact, ethos, right? The connection between Odysseus and Achilles, because there is one, right? So he leaves out what Agamemnon says, and he puts in his own ending here that actually appeals to Achilles far more than saying Agamemnon's a better man. And then you get the next argument, which is really it's an argument. And I'm going to skip over Achilles' response for just a minute. You get the argument then from Phoenix, and Phoenix basically says, "Remember who I am. Remember that I am your friend, your mentor. I'm like a father to you. Come back in honor of me. Come back because I have been faithful to you, so you be faithful to me." So it's very much an appeal to character. Phoenix he's an older man, and he's a mentor or tutor to Achilles, who has been in his own household, in Achilles' household for many years. And so Achilles, when he addresses Phoenix, he addresses him like as though he were his father. He's like a college professor, I guess you will, for a student. And Phoenix's appeal is all, you know who I am, you know what I've been through. So defend your people, right? Help me and help everybody else, because that's what a good man does. Let's go to the end of his speech. This is on line 730, and at the end of it, he basically makes a pretty good case in terms of ethical quality or connection to the speaker. And at the very end, throws in the kicker here at 7:20. So he throws in the kicker here, and he says, he's telling a little story here. Finally, Meleager's bride, beautiful Cleopatra, begged him, streaming tears, recounting all the griefs that fall to people whose cities seized and plundered, the men slaughtered, citadel burned to rubble, enemies dragging the children, raping the sashed and lovely women. How his spirit leapt when he heard those horrors, and buckling his gleaming armor round his body, out he rushed to war, and so he saved them all from the fatal day. He gave way to his own feelings, but too late. No longer would they make good the gifts, those troves of gifts to warm his heart, and even so he beat off that disaster, empty handed. So Phoenix is saying, here's a story about a character who decided too late to stop being angry. And people didn't give him gifts then because the trouble, the destruction of the city had occurred, but he was able to beat back the army that was attacking the city, but he didn't get any awards. He was empty handed at the end of it. Don't you be that way. Think about what Odysseus just said and all the gifts you can get if you come back right now. He says, you wipe such thoughts from your mind. Don't let your spirit turn you down that path, dear boy, towards being like the god of the underworld. Harder to save the warships once they're up in flames. Makes sense, right? Harder to save the warships once they're up in flames. Now, while the gifts still wait, go out and fight. Go. The Achaeans all will honor you like a god. Right? You're going to get honored if you go now and join. But enter this man-killing war without the gifts. Your fame will flag. No longer the same honor, even though you hurl the Trojans home. So if you don't change now and come back to the battle, not only will you be letting me down, you're going to let yourself down too, because you're not going to get all these gifts. You're going to come in too late. Don't do that. It doesn't make sense. He's very much the college professor. And Achilles rejects him too. We'll look at what he has to say in just a minute. And then finally, the last speaker that comes to him, which Vitas Piace, not Diomedes, Ajax. My bad, Ajax. Ajax, who is this tremendously large and powerful fella. Okay, Diomedes is similarly large and powerful, but they're different characters. So I apologize. Ajax jumps in and he lets Achilles have it because he's rejected the two other offers, and then Ajax finally lets him have it, and he gives him a dressing down and an insult, and he tries to encourage in him a thaumatic response, the way Diomedes tried to encourage that in Agamemnon, to bring him out like what's wrong with you? You know, be a man, step up. And here's Ajax in line 760. Giant Ajax rose to his feet. So he's not just doing it sitting down because they're all sitting around the campfire talking. He rose to his feet. Ready, Odysseus? Come, home we go now. Let's get out of here, right? This is worthless. There's no achieving our mission here, I see. Not with this approach. Best to return at once. Give the Achaeans a full report, defeating as it is. What a letdown. And we're not going to change this guy. What a milksop. They must be sitting there waiting for us now. And then he turns to Achilles. Achilles, he's made his own proud spirit so wild and his chest so savage, not a thought for his comrades' love. This guy doesn't care about the other people in the army. He doesn't give two whips about anybody else. We honored him past all others by the ships, but he's a hard, ruthless man. Why, any man will accept the blood price paid for a brother murdered, a child done to death, and the murderer lives on his own country. The man is paid enough, and the injured kinsman curbs his pride, his smoldering, vengeful spirit once he takes the price. But you, Achilles, you, the gods have planted a cruel, relentless fury in your chest. And all for a girl? It's a great line because, he's appealing to thumos, which is a manly response. And he calls Achilles out here. He really says, you dare to reject your friends and your family members and your king and your cause and the righteous joining in battle, and for what? For a girl? Women aren't worth that much, Ajax says. Just one? Here, we offer you 7. You want a girl? Agamemnon's going to give you 7 and then some, right? That and a treasure trove besides. Put some human kindness in your heart. Show respect for your own house. How dare you? You betray your own house, your own people. Here we are under your roof, sent from the whole Achaean. We came here to try and talk sense into you, and what do? You keep rejecting us. Past all other men, all other Achaean comrades, we long to be your closest, dearest friend. We want to be your friends. We're with you. We're in the same camp. What's wrong with you? But Achilles rejects him too, and Ajax has no response to it, to Achilles' rejection. And I want to look at his three rejections because each one of these arguments is a pretty powerful argument. A logos argument by Odysseus. Look at all the stuff and the fame and all this. An ethos argument from Phoenix, right? Honor me, honor your friends, honor your family. Don't be like this guy. Don't lose fame. And a pathos argument by Diomedes. You are nothing but a wuss. What a loser. What a jerk. And after all we did for you. But he rejects each one. And if we look at each rejection, you can see that the rejection indicates something going on in Achilles. So we go back here to line 380 first, because this is where he responds, his retort or his response to what Odysseus is offering. And remember, Odysseus is offering a great deal of good stuff. If this were the Price is Right, he would definitely be winning this guy over. But Achilles' response indicates that it's gone beyond Agamemnon. He says, "Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, great tactician." He's respectful to him. "I must say what I have to say straight out. Must tell you how I feel and how all this will end. So you won't crowd around me one after another, coaxing like a murmuring clutch of doves. I hate that man like the very gates of death, who says one thing but hides another in his heart." In other words, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. There's no duplicity here. This is what I am going through. I will say it outright. Will Agamemnon win me over? Not for all the world, nor will all the rest of Achaea's armies. No. And you think at first, oh, he's just being petulant, he's just being a jerk. But then he says this, and this is really interesting. He says, "No, what lasting thanks in the long run for warring with our enemies on and on, no end. One and the same lot for the man who hangs back and the man who battles hard. The same honor waits for the coward and the brave. They both go down to death. The fighter who shirks, the one who works to exhaustion." Now, dwell on that for a minute. That's some powerful stuff that he's putting forth here. And this is in the time that he has had between the initial anger at Agamemnon and the going to his mother and then sitting in his tents to brood, to think about this. And it indicates to some degree a really profound change in the boyishness of Achilles at the beginning of the epic. He has gone to another place, not necessarily a good place, but a different place, more profound, more reflexive, more thinking about the whole universe. In a way, this, I think, embodies how depression and anger and all those other demons of melancholia, how they spiral, how they begin to increase in their turning and turning in the widening gyre. Because Achilles is no longer saying, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to come back because I hate Agamemnon. He's saying, I'm not coming back because what's the point? Everybody dies and everybody goes down to Hades. I'm not going to win anything permanent. If I try, I'm going to die. And if I don't try, I'm going to die. So why do I bother trying at all? What's the point? What's the purpose? No amount of gifts on this earth are going to last. Nothing lasts. Everything is dust. Everything is dirt. There's no point to gaining honor, no point to gaining wisdom, no point to gaining awards, money, gifts, nothing. It's pointless. And this is something which I think infects a great many people. You come to a point where you say, what is the purpose of any of this anymore? The 9 to 5 doesn't make sense anymore. All of it is just. And that's what he is. He's thinking like Ecclesiastes in the Bible. Vanity of vanity. All is vanity. The sun rises and the sun sets, and where it goes, nobody knows. Right? Everything is like a great puffing of wind. And in that way, he has become like the god of the underworld, the god of death. And he has this great metaphor that he says here. He says, "What's laid up for me? What pittance? Nothing. You know, is there anything that I have achieved that I can say that's permanent? Is there anything that I've achieved in an eternal way? No, nothing. There's nothing. After suffering hardships year in, year out, staking my life on the mortal risks of war, I have nothing to show for it. There's nothing at all. I'm like a mother bird hurrying morsels back to her unfledged young, whatever she can catch, but it's all starvation wages for herself." That's a great metaphor. Yeah, beautiful metaphor. He says, I'm like that bird that you see wearing itself out, killing itself, feeding its young, and getting nothing in return. Nothing at all. So for me, many nights I've bivouacked in harness. Day after bloody day, I've hacked my passage through, fighting other soldiers to win their wives as prizes. Like that bird. 12 cities of men I've stormed and sacked from shipboard. 11 I claimed by land on the fertile earth of Troy. And from all I dragged off piles of splendid plunder, hauled it away, and always gave the lot to Agamemnon, that son of Atreus, always skulking behind the lines, safe in his fast ships, and he would take it all. See, so Agamemnon's kind of like the baby bird in a way, and Achilles is like the mother bird who's wearing herself out. And it's a pretty powerful argument actually. Right? Why must we battle Trojans, men of Argos? Why did he muster an army, lead us here, that son of Atreus? Why? Why in the world? If not for Helen with her loose and lustrous hairs, are they the only men alive who love their wives? Those sons of Atreus? Never. Right? All these other guys that are here, they have wives, they have children, they have families. Are they less important than Atreus, than Agamemnon and his brother Menelaus? Right? Any decent man, a man with sense, loves his own, cares for his own as deeply as I. I loved that woman with all my heart, though I won her like a trophy with my spear. But now that he's torn my honor from my hands and robbed me, lied to me, don't let him try me now. I know him. I know him too well. He'll never win me over. Right? He'll be the type of guy who would turn around and betray me the second he gets what he wants. It's not going to happen again. I loved that woman, and she was taken away, and that is something I can't get over because it makes everything else meaningless. This is very much like the person who has his family suddenly die, or a friend suddenly die, or his job suddenly lost to him of several years, or something like that. It's like you've built up all this credit you thought, or all this attempt to make a good life, and like that, it's gone. A windstorm, right? A car crash, a tsunami, cancer, and it's suddenly gone. What the heck is the point? That's pretty powerful stuff. And like I said, it indicates a much more adult way, I suppose you could say, of dealing with the world than his earlier, man, I got hurt kind of attitude of a child. It's not better, right? I'm not saying it's a better place, but it's a much more profound, grave, universal experience of loss, and then the loss of meaning, which is what he's going through. A similar thing comes up with his response to Phoenix. And we turn to his response to Phoenix here in line 740. And we'll look at that, and then Ajax, and we'll be done. In Phoenix, remember, has told this whole story about the loss of kudos, the loss of awards, and about the treachery, and about honoring people that should be honored. And Achilles says, you heard what I said to Odysseus, right? What do I need with these types of honors that you're giving to me? My honor lies in the great decree of Zeus. The only one who can really honor me at this point is God, and no one else can. Which again is a very much more profound thing to say than what we got at the beginning of the epic. Right? That gift will hold me here by the beaked ships as long as the life breath remains inside my chest, and my springing knees will lift me. But another thing, right? Stop confusing my mixed resolve with this weeping and wailing just to serve his pleasure, Atreus's mighty son. It degrades you to curry favor with that man, and I will hate you for it. I, who love you. Right? So that whole appeal to ethos. I honor you, Phoenix. I love you, Phoenix. I've always respected you. Don't drop to the level of trying to, be the go-between for Agamemnon, because that's no good. Agamemnon can't give me anything. I've told Odysseus here that everything's meaningless to me. So you're trying to have Agamemnon get me back under his thumb. That's it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It degrades you to do that. And I think Phoenix recognizes this. Both Odysseus and Phoenix do not respond to Achilles' retorts. Ajax responds, right? He jumps up and he gets all mad and tries to appeal to Thumos, but that doesn't work either. Achilles says, Phoenix, I honor you. Why don't you stay the night here? The other two will work their way back to camp. It's difficult in the dark. You're older. You're my mentor, my tutor. Stay here. Patroclus will set up a bed for you, but stay here. I'll honor you with that, with the Zeus gift of strength for strangers. But then Ajax gives this big appeal to Thumos, right? How dare you? What kind of man are you? And Achilles answers warmly. That is, he gets angry himself. And he says, what you said is all well said, after my own heart. But my heart still heaves with rage whenever I call to mind that arrogance of his. How he mortified me right in front of the Argives, that son of Atreus, treating me like some vagabond, like some outcast, stripped of all my rights. How dare he? You go back to him. You declare my message. I will not think of arming for bloody war again. Not till the son of wise King Priam, dazzling Hector batters all the way to the Myrmidon ships and shelters, slaughtering Argives, gutting the hulls with fire. Round my own black ship and camp, this Hector blazing for battle will be stopped, I trust. Stopped dead in his tracks. So your appeal to Thumos doesn't work. I am angry. I'm already angry. But I'm not going to fight for Agamemnon. I'm going to retreat to my own little enclave. Defend that. Defend my family. Defend my ships. The rest, they can all get destroyed for all I care. And Ajax has no retort. He doesn't respond. And so the three of them get up, and Achilles makes a bed for Phoenix and keeps him there that night. And the rest go back to tell Agamemnon the news. And at the very end, Diomedes proclaims that, we aren't going to get this guy back. He's not going to come back. He says, Great Marshal Atrides, Lord of men Agamemnon, if only you had never begged the dauntless son of Peleus, holding out to Achilles trove on trove. Yes, I wish you had done that. He's a proud man at the best of times, and now you've only plunged him deeper in his pride, his hubris. I have done with the man. Whether he sails for home or stays on here, I've just cut him out. I'm not going to bother this guy. We sink or swim on our own. He's out. He says he'll fight again in his own good time whenever the courage in him flares and a god fires his blood. So come, let's all of us unite and go to sleep now, right? And when dawn's red fingers shine in all their glory, we'll deploy, we'll fight, and Agamemnon, you lead us, because that's all we have. We're all alone. And they all say, yeah, no, you're right, Diomedes. And they pour cups to the gods, they seek out their shelter, and they spend the night in rest. And that's the end of the chapter. So overall, a great chapter at looking at the nature of rhetoric, of the Silva Rhetoricae. It's a great chapter to see how has Achilles changed already. He's not the same boyish, kind of bratty character that we saw at the beginning. He's changed. He's become, it's not goo, it's formless almost. It's almost like he's floating in a world of his own. So, isolated, surrounded, cocooned off from the world that most humans go through. And he's like the book of Ecclesiastes or the book of Job. He's sitting on his dunghill, scraping his sores, right, that he got from Agamemnon. And all is vanity for him. Vanity on vanities. There's no point to anything. Not a better spot to be in. In fact, in some ways, it's a worse spot to be in. It's like the valley of the shadow of death, to use the, or the underworld, if you wanted to use that comparison, or the exile in the desert. But it is a place that is changing him already. He's going to, if he comes out, if he emerges, if he lives through this, it will change him and he'll be a different person. And I think Homer is suggesting that he will be a mature person who recognizes that valley of shadow of death as something that's not good. It doesn't help anybody to see the world as pointless and purposeless. Because at some point, as an adult, you have to make the decision. Am I going to remain isolated, angry, moody, cut off from everybody else and contributing nothing? Or am I going to recognize that I've been in that place and it's a reality? And nevertheless, I am going to do what humans need to do in order to survive and help one another. That's the difference between immaturity and death and maturity. And what we would say in a Christian idea, eternal life, which is something that goes beyond the mother bird hastening morsels back to her children, which in some ways I think Homer is foreshadowing or alluding to or pointing towards in his own way. Well, that's all for today. I thank you for joining me, and I hope that this was beneficial. If it was, please do give the usual like and thumbs up, and subscribe to the Patreon, subscribe to the Substack. Every little bit helps, and good luck to you. We'll see you the next time around when we tackle Book 10. Thank you. God bless.